Hey there, my friends. How's everybody doing out there today? Beautiful day here in lower Alabama after a couple of gloomy days. Woke up to nothing but blue skies. So that is always welcome. Yesterday I was reading a little Wayne Dyer on the internet. I was thinking about this, like when he was alive, I forget what year he died, but I was never really familiar with his work and his writings up until about 5 years ago, and I kind of went down a rabbit hole where I started watching a lot of video talks that he gave, and then I've read a couple of his books, and just generally enjoyed everything he shares. So when I came across this one, I was reading it for a while and I said, well, this one looks familiar. I know I've probably read this before. And I also realized I've shared this before, but it's been several years ago. I wasn't even living here at the time, so it's been over 3 years ago. So I thought it was valuable enough to share again. These are just real simple and they're pretty much common sense. And a lot of times things like this, if they're not common sense, they just don't resonate with me because I think sometimes people speak in too lofty language and just get a little to where they're not as understandable. Anyway, I've always just like really appreciated Dr. Dyer. And I've got my notes, so if I look down, that's why I can't remember. I couldn't remember 5 things of anything without writing them down with this old senile brain. But anyhow, the first one is when you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. And this is just basically talking about how our outlook and interpretation greatly influence our experiences. I don't know where the quote comes from, but I've heard this said a number of times and I'm just paraphrasing. I may not have it exactly right, but that life is 10% what happens and it's like 90% how we perceive it. So there's just so many illustrations that you can probably think of like, the way we look at things, the way we perceive things sets our attitude. And I'm not talking any mystical type stuff. I'm just talking, from a practical perspective. So, the next time something happens and you immediately get ready to go, oh my God, that's terrible. Why did this happen to me? Maybe sit with it a little bit, look into it a little bit and see how it could possibly be working for you instead of necessarily working against you. The second one is there are no justified resentments. And that can be a tough one for some people. And I think a lot of people don't quite understand what is being said there when there are no justified resentments and like people should just learn how to forgive. Listen, people have experienced terrible things out there. And I struggle with this a lot. And I see a lot of people that have had abusive relationships with their parents and they've had horrible things happen to them. And to be honest, I don't understand when they say, I forgave that person. But I do understand, the more I think about it, the more I do understand it because you're not really, when you let go of resentment, when you forgive somebody that's done something terrible, you're not necessarily even doing it for them. You're doing it for yourself because holding on to anger or resentment is very detrimental to our well-being. It's kind of like I've heard this analogy a number of times. I may have even read it when I was reading about this. It's like when you get bit by a snake. A snake bite doesn't kill you. It's the poison inside you that kills you. And that resentment is a poison. That anger is a poison. That whatever is you're feeling against that other person is a poison. Or like another good analogy is it's like holding on to anger, holding on to resentment, all those kind of things. It's like holding on to a burning coal. You're just hurting yourself. So in the end, when they say there are no justified resentments, it's mostly and this is how I interpret it. I don't know if necessarily he did, but this is for our peace of mind. This is for our well-being. So I think when you think of it from that perspective, it's not just like, okay, everybody, forgive everybody because there's some horrible things. And I don't know if I could forgive, some of the things I've seen out there. Number 3 is what you think is what you become. And I think this is a quote from Dr. Dyer's. I just kind of jotted some notes down as I was going. once you understand that what you think about is what expands, you get careful about what you think about. And immediately people go to, and I know he was kind of a proponent of the attraction and the law of attraction and all that kind of stuff. And I don't know really what I think about that kind of stuff, but I think mainly it's not, when people talk like this, I don't take it with that mystical, like, ooh, you put this out in the universe and you're going to manifest and it's going to come out of blah, blah, blah. I think it's probably just what the things that we focus on, we really focus on. And the things that we focus on, we tend to put effort into and we tend to put our time into. And that is what makes the things expand. It's not like some sort of mystical force or just out there. In other words, you can't just sit in a chair and chant like, I want this, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this. When we change what we think, it just kind of helps us for our focus. But it's like I say, I get a little uncomfortable with kind of the mystical talk when it comes to that kind of stuff, but just my interpretation. And I'm not the smartest guy in the world. Number 4 is another good one. I've even quoted this one before. Be open to everything and attached to nothing. And it's how we should never close our minds off to what is possible for us. Otherwise, we close off the genius that is possible. Being detached, and also when you say attached to nothing, it just basically means being detached to the outcomes. Like, we can go into a situation, we can do everything we can to get the outcome of that situation, but, we have to somewhat let go if the situation doesn't turn out exactly as we want. And sometimes the situation won't turn out exactly as we want, but it ends up working for our best in the long run. So, like I say, just be open to everything. And it kind of, I'll tie it in with number 5 here, which is don't die with your music still in you. And I kind of take that as just like following our purpose. Like, a lot of times people, and for different reasons, like a lot of times people have to pay the bills, but they're stuck at a job they absolutely hate, when they have a passion inside of them that they really want to follow, but or sometimes it's because of self-doubt and whatever, and just thinking like, well, I can't do this. But we should not, a lot of I don't know, you hear all these things about like the things that people talk about when they're on their deathbed. And I think those are some of the things people didn't do, probably the passions they never really pursued, like that person out there. I think this happens quite often, and sometimes parents and families can be involved in this. Is like, the parents have these high ideals. I want my kid to be a lawyer. I want my kid to be a doctor. And maybe the kid has a very, musical talent, and the kid wants to express this musical talent. And life happens, and maybe circumstances happen, and they just kind of, as you get older and you get more responsibilities, you just kind of like let those dreams go, you let those purposes go, you let those passions go. And then I think maybe we get to the end of this life and we're like, oh man, I just, I wish I had expressed that. I wish I had done something with that. So anyhow, that's enough for today. Just kind of wanted to share those thoughts with you. And I just recommend, if you've never, read any of Dr. Dyer's stuff, or if you're not much of a reader, just go to YouTube. There's a number of really good talks of his over there. And I think I've enjoyed the talks like after he had his cancer. I don't even remember the exact story. I know he had cancer. It might have been leukemia. I think it was leukemia. I don't remember if he was in remission or had beaten that. And then he actually died of a heart attack. But there was a period after he was in remission where he really, or when he was doing better after the cancer, where he just really had a lot of gems out there, to learn from. So anyhow, hope you guys enjoyed this one. If you like it, please give me a thumbs up, and I'll see you here later in the week. Peace.